Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have Kelsey Hersh with us. She's the head of talent acquisition over at Hometap. Kelsey, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So where are you from?
Originally, I'm from Ojai, California, which is a small town just a hour and a half north of LA.
All right, good stuff.
Yeah.
And did you spend your whole childhood there?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
born and raised there. Super small town. They actually had one hospital with a birthing center that's actually no longer there. You can't be born in Ojai anymore. And I lived there until I was 17 and went off to college. And now I'm in Boston. And I went to college at Tufts. I've been out here for almost 20 years, which is wild.
Nice. And Ojai, that's spelled Ojai, is that right?
Yep, that's
Okay.
right.
Okay. I'm not going to tell you what I initially spelled it, like when I punched it into Google just now, but like somehow Google knew what I was trying to do. Um,
Yeah.
but man, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's
So
gorgeous.
pretty.
It's the super small town, 8,000 people. It's a valley surrounded by mountains. So
Oh
now
my
it's kind of
God.
like a vacation destination for people from LA. When I was growing up there, no one had heard of it, but it was like very idyllic, like very small town growing up
Yeah,
for sure.
it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
For everybody tuning in, you should definitely look up some photos here. Ojai. Oh hi. That's just
Yeah,
something same
that's the
thing now.
one.
But yeah, so you said too it's become like a really popular destination for folks to come and live or at least to have vacation homes or
Yeah, a lot of celebrities live there now.
yeah.
So it's actually like a whole drama in the town because a lot of like property values are through the roof and people are getting pushed out of town and
Of
whatever.
course.
But it's like such a nice place to go home and visit because like the food is amazing there. I mean, it's just again, it's like a little vacation town. And then out here in Boston, like we have those places, but they only kind of exist in the summer. But out in
Mm.
California, they're kind of like just year-round destinations. So yeah, my family doesn't actually like live in town anymore. Again, they were kind of part of the part of the being pushed out of town, but it was a really lovely place to grow up.
Yeah, it looks absolutely beautiful and you had some somewhat of a unique experience, and I know you'd mentioned that your parents divorced, I think, when you were pretty young, right? So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, they divorced, I think, before I was a year old. I have no memory of my parents being together. And so I was always kind of between both houses. I was super lucky because they were like very amicable. They got along really well. Like they did all the right things. They focused on me in terms of like how they made decisions. But I had two very different households. My dad lived like it was, a very like normal middle class life. And my mom she was an artist, like she was a musician, an actress. She ran a Shakespeare festival in town, which was like all summer long and like something I did constantly. And she kind of like built this home environment that was like essentially an artist community. It was this big property and there were always like friends of my parents that were there and staying there for extended periods of time, or like if someone was coming in town for the music festival or for the Shakespeare festival, like we would house them. And so there were just like always new and interesting faces kind of like around, and there were always events and they would throw these big parties. And like it was just this like really, really vibrant community. And it's not something like I would ever do on my own. Like that's not my personality at all. Me and my mom are very, very different. But to grow up in that environment, I think like it just like it exposed me to so many different types of people. Like it was really, really interesting and something I actually didn't realize was like different
Mm.
until I came out to college and started talking to people and they're like, what? Like, what is your life? And I was like, okay, let me back up. Let me figure it out. But it's been kind of it was just really fun.
Yeah, it's funny when, as a kid, we of course don't have any context or perspective of different, you just
No.
sort of accept whatever is
Yeah.
happening as normal, right?
Yeah.
Like, as like, oh, this is just life for everybody, right? Like, it could be literally
Yeah.
anything. It could be any, like, literally any experience you have when you're five, your brain just goes like, yeah, this is
Yeah, this
totally
is it.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my poor daughter. So this is kind of a wild random story, but it just kind of made me think of this, like, in terms of like kids not knowing what normal is. Um,
Yeah.
so last week, I'm not kidding you. This is so random. I got attacked by a bird. I'm not kidding. Yeah, for real. Like
Oh,
I was
attacked. Yeah.
yeah, I got it. Like I was running, I was jogging, right?
Uh-huh.
And I guess I ran like underneath a tree where I got too close to a nest or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like I felt something hit the back of my head really hard. And
That's
I was like, what?
scary.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell? So I assume that like a branch or something drops, right? So I'm looking around the ground
Yeah.
and I don't see anything that could have hit me on the head. Like there's no branches. There was like rocks, but I'm like, well, rocks don't fall from trees. Like this the
No.
and uh and so like I go home and the back of my head's like kind of scratched up and it's just like, well, I guess it's like a bird, I guess. I had to go to the doctor, get antibiotics. My poor daughter, she's like
Oh my gosh.
she's 6. And she's like just a little kid and she's just like she's just like, "What? You got attacked by a bird?" And she probably in her head thinks like, "Oh, this is like you just got to like look out for birds. Like like you just gonna be walking down the
Well,
street."
my 5-year-old has been terrified of birds. She's kind of getting over it now, but when she was younger, she was absolutely terrified.
Really?
And I think it's because we were once at the beach and a seagull came and, like, took our food. And she was convinced that birds wanted to take anything. She'd be like, okay,
Really?
the bird is going to take the car. The bird is going to take my swing set. I'm like, the bird can't get those things. The bird doesn't want them.
Oh my
It did
God.
want your lobster roll in Maine, but it does not want anything else. So,
Okay,
yeah,
so this is so
it's very
both
funny.
of our children are traumatized from birds.
Yes.
That is hilarious. But yeah, anyways, like that's like it's just sort of funny, right? Because they're just like, oh yeah, like this is just something you have to look out for. Like birds are gonna steal all your stuff. Like
Yeah.
this, it's just sort of funny, like just the lack of perspective, because you just have no idea what normal is. But this is like getting back to your story. It's like it's really fascinating. So you also had mentioned that regular like there was a fair amount of like parties and events at your house, and what was one of the one you were telling like you were saying every Tuesday night there was an event at your house, right?
Yeah, so my parents were like very early attendees at Burning Man. So like now everyone knows what that is, but they were going before anyone from San Francisco was going. And so they had kind of like built this community around like going out to the desert and like building things to burn and like all these different interesting art projects. And so like Tuesday was like the big like Burning Man community gathering night at our home. So sometimes that was like building an art car, like whatever it might be. But the big thing that they all did fire dancing. So like, just as you'd imagine, like things lit on fire and like dancing with them. And they would gather like, dozens of people at the house and they would just practice, like, and they would learn from each other and they would do lessons. And like, it was this whole thing that they would do every Tuesday night. And I would get that out there a little bit. I was like very reluctant as a kid to participate in these kinds of things. But my mom always tells the story of like like she liked to tell people how uptight I was because we were very different. Like this was not my vibe. And I would be up in my bedroom and I'd be like calling out the window. I'm like, can you turn the music down? Like, can you guys stop? Because like I have to go to bed. I have a test in the morning. I have whatever. So it was interesting. It was like this very mixed bag of like it was really fun and I enjoyed it a lot, but also I was like, okay, guys,
Right.
we gotta do real life. But yeah, I mean, they would throw these huge, huge parties. I mean, like lots of costumes. My mom was like again in the arts, and so everything was a costume. Everything was a dress up opportunity. Um, no surprises now. I like hate Halloween. You can't get a costume on me to like save your life. So like it's interesting how, like everyone like rebels in their own way and mine was like into a very like more traditional life than the one I grew up
Anti-Halloween.
in.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no.
None
I
of
do
this.
it for my kids, but
Right, of
that's
course,
where I
yeah.
draw the line. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. And so you said it was pretty different at your dad's place.
Yeah, I mean, my dad's family is like a very like just a normal family. He remarried when I was really young. So I was very close to my stepmom. I had a little brother over there, half brother, who I still love and adore. My stepmom had bipolar disorder, and so
Mhm.
that there was just a lot of there was a lot of instability, but in a very, very different way to the kind of like instability that I had at my mom's house, right? And so like navigating those two environments, I think was really formative for me. I think like again, I didn't really realize it at the time, but being able to kind of like code switch between homes, between people, between, like the values in those homes were very different. I think, everyone was cared about kindness and, being a good person, and like all of those like core values were the same, and people got along really well. And so I think that was really important to me. And being able to exist in very different types of environments was just like essential to survival, I think, growing up.
Do you feel like that's benefited you in terms of how you approach your career? Or I'm just curious because I mean, I grew up in a divorced household as
Yeah.
well, and then also I'm divorced from my daughter's mom, and so I'm looking at her development. I'm wondering, it's like there are two different households. I don't know if it's as drastically different as your upbringing, but I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious, like trying to make it work for her, obviously. Like how do we make the situation like, benefit her development and give her exposure to different perspectives, right? And different ways of living and doing things. But
Yeah.
curious, like how do you feel like it like impacted you in terms of how your worldview and how you operate as a professional, as a mother, just like
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I think, well, first of all, having kids has made me realize, like, to some extent, we're just born who we are, right? And I think, like, my parents could have been a lot less lucky and had a child who just, like, was not predisposed to being able to manage these things. And so I think, like, being able to kind of see your kid as they are and like being able to help them navigate the situation that they're in front of, but also with the tools that they were kind of like born and that you've given them. Like, I think that's been a really interesting lesson for me as a mom. But in terms of my career and just like how I've made kind of decisions and that, like, I'm in the business of people, and I've always been in the business of people, right? And like people are challenging and people are different and people are unpredictable. Again, like it's not a direct tie, but I have to imagine that living this life where I was like dealing with so many different types of people all the time and being able to do that has allowed me to kind of come into my work, whether it was, before I was at Hometap and doing kind of like career counseling type of work. I'm sure we'll talk about that. Or now, like when we're dealing with candidates and hiring managers, and like they're all coming at things from their own point of view. They've got their own perspective. There are different things that are going to set them off. Like being able to build trust with different types of people, I think is the biggest kind of like hack, right, to being able to do this job well. You have to be able to build trust. And if you can't, like it's not going to work.
yeah, that's well said. And so you ended up going to college at is it Tufts College?
Yeah,
Not in Boston or
it's
where's
right
that?
outside of Boston.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 And I mean, like from a young age, I was definitely like, I was very academic. I cared a lot about school. And my parents say that starting at like 10 years old, I said I was going to go to college in the Northeast in New England. I have no idea where I got that idea. I'm sure it was like on a TV show or something. That's the that's the only reason I could have known.
Yeah.
Um, but I just knew that like California wasn't the end goal for me. And so, I always joke like when I was in California, my friends would make fun of me and they'd say like, you walk so fast, or like you're like always so anxious, or this and that. And I got out here to Boston and everyone was like, oh, you seem so laid back, like you're so calm. And I was like, oh, okay, these are my people. Like I found a place where people are kind of
Yeah.
like moving at the
You're like the chill
pace.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up in the town I grew up in, it was so small, and like again, a lot of artists, not a lot of people with traditional jobs. I didn't know a lot of like doctors or lawyers. I certainly didn't know anyone in finance. Like none of those like traditional jobs were things that I was like very exposed to. It was a lot of teachers, it was a lot of writers, it was a lot of this stuff, and I felt like no one moved with a sense of urgency. And I always have a sense of urgency, which I think like is a
Yeah.
good fit for a career in TA. But it was really nice to be able to like go to a place where I felt like people understood me and kind of thought the same way that I did, and were able to kind of like help me to grow in that way as well.
And you studied education, right? Like that was your degree?
Uh, Eventually. So in
Okay.
undergrad, I studied political science,
Mm.
and I didn't have like a career path in mind. I just got there and took some classes, and like that was a class that I really loved. I loved my intro to poli sci. It turns out I just had like one of the best professors at the
That makes a big
university.
difference, right?
Yeah, and then like I just kind of followed that path. And I did take quite a few classes in education. I took quite a few classes in women's studies. Like I did a lot of work, in the music department, which I had done all through high school. And so, yeah, I mean, like I tried to, I just followed things that I found interesting, which like in retrospect, maybe I wish I had had a little bit more career focus in college, but I was just trying to do things that I thought were interesting. So I ended up majoring in poli sci, and then I got my first job out of college kind of by luck. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to be in like social impact was really, really important in the university that I went to. A lot of people went into government jobs or worked on political campaigns, or, like I had friends who went abroad and did like service work abroad. So those were all sorts of things that were like very central to the culture of the university that I went to. I met this woman at a random career networking event who was in nonprofit consulting. And I was like, oh, that actually sounds really interesting, like working with nonprofits to help them to better themselves. And so I ended up landing my first job out of college at a nonprofit consulting firm out here in Boston. And so, like, again, it was all just like a very fluid path. I got my master's in education a little bit later at my next job when I kind of like decided that was, I thought for a minute that that was like the path that I wanted to go down. So yeah, I've done like a little bit of everything there.
Nice. Okay, cool. And
Yeah.
so to fast forward a little bit to where you are today, now you're
Yeah.
the head of talent acquisition,
Yeah.
um, which is a recent promotion, right? That's
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah,
right.
I was director of
Congratulations.
recruiting. Yeah, and now we're kind of like expanding the role a little bit to think a
That's
bit more
awesome.
about like talent acquisition more broadly.
Or is it
Yeah.
head of talent or head of talent acquisition?
Talent acquisition.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
cool.
we have a full kind of like HR department that's a little bit separate, but we work really closely, of course.
So what's the difference in the role, do you think? I mean, is there going to be nuanced differences or big differences in terms of your day to day, in head of versus director?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that we at Hometap think about promotions and career growth, like in a lot of cases, and in my kind of trajectory at the company, like you kind of start doing the role before you're, officially given that title. I started at the company as a recruiter. I had managed before, but I was like, okay, I'm changing industries. Like I'm gonna, just take this move and kind of go in as an IC, knowing that like ultimately I wanted to lead and manage. And so I kind of like took that on, and then I moved into a manager role and then took a little bit more on and moved up. And that's kind of how it's been. I think as we think about the difference between like recruiting and TA, it's really about how do we think about the full life cycle of the employee, right? Like, and that's not down to the things that are like HR, colleagues are doing, but really thinking about like succession planning, thinking about where do we have points of weakness? Thinking about how do we work with our hiring managers to be a counselor. And that's something that I've always like prided myself on, is being able to be like a really good sounding board, and I don't have any problem like pushing back on a hiring manager when they tell me that they think they need this, and I know X about the company, and so I'm going to ask the tough questions, right? And so I think my ability to do those things is probably what has allowed me to kind of grow into this role, because I don't look at things from how do we get someone in the door, right? I'm not really, I mean, of course I'm focused on recruiting the best talent and getting them into the company, but it's
Sure.
really about like how do we bring people into the company that are going to be long-term fits, that are going to be value add, that are going to be a really good culture fit, who are going to help us grow? Does this role align with the business goals that we have? And so for me, um, it's really important to have context into everything that I'm doing, into the business, into, I'm really, really lucky that I work for a leader, our chief people officer, who really brings me into a lot of those decisions and gives me the context that I need, and she always has. And that's how I've always been really the most successful in any job that I've had, because I think like TA doesn't exist in a vacuum. Recruiting doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in this full picture of the company and what is the company trying to achieve and how are we helping it get there. And if we lose sight of that, then we start to focus on these small wins or just getting someone in the door to fill a rec. And I, I don't think that's the best use of this function.
Yeah, I hear you. And so congrats again on the promotion. That's awesome. And I wanted to ask you about 2026. We got a little over half the year to go, which is kind of crazy to think about. It's already May. What is your obsession from now to the end of the year? Like, what are you really going to be focused on professionally?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of what we just talked about. It's
Hmm.
really continuing to expand my own focus on the business and how is my function, how is my team supporting the business in that way. I think we're all obsessed, right, in this field with how are we going to build and maintain the quality that we have in this world where AI is everywhere, right? Where candidates are using it for their applications. There's a lot of candidate fraud. Like, how are, like, there's so many different things that I'm sure everyone on this podcast is talking to you about, because it's everywhere. But for me, it's like, how do we continue to focus on values? How do we continue to focus on quality? The business that I'm in is in a really interesting like growth and inflection point in terms of like how we think about the business and how do we grow the business. And we've had a lot of really, really great success. And so it's really about like scale, but not necessarily scale in terms of number of people, but like scale in terms of complexity of the business. And so it's been really important for me and my team and our hiring managers to be thinking about like, okay, is this person that we're talking to a good fit for Hometap a year ago? Or are they a good fit for Hometap today? Or are they a
Mm.
good fit for Hometap a year from now, 2 years from now? Right. And like really trying to square those things. And in some cases, that's the same answer across the board. And in some cases, it's a little bit different. Like the needs are a little bit different. And so I think it's just really, really important to be able to do that. And what we always come back to is values, right? Like we're a very values-based company. We do a lot of values-based hiring, making sure we're training our interviewers on how to do those things, how to assess, not just for like, can you do the job, but can you do the job in this environment and really successfully in this environment? Are you going to be a really like great colleague? We talk about being like good owners and good neighbors because we're in the housing space. So that's kind of our little housing language. But I think it really like plays in. Like we want people who are excellent at their jobs and are going to be a really good fit for the company overall. And so those those benchmarks change over time. Like this, I don't work in a static company. And so for 2026, a lot of it is thinking about like, how do we do that while also working with a lean team and optimizing our processes and utilizing AI where we can, but not in a way that removes any sort of human element to what we're doing. And how do we review resumes that are generated by AI? How do we talk to candidates who may be deep faking, right? Like they're all like there's so many different inputs. But I think it always comes back to like having a really human process, making sure that we're assessing for the right things, making sure that we're really aligned with our hiring managers and we're all kind of working with the same goal in mind, which is again like that big picture support of the company and where are we going and who's going to be a good fit.
Yeah. And I also at this point in your career, you've been in talent acquisition leadership at well, I mean, you were a recruiting manager starting in 2022, then in 2023, director of recruiting, and now head of TA. I'd love to get your advice on top takeaways as a talent acquisition leader. Before we hit record, one of the things you mentioned is value-based hiring. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's really important. Hometap has been great about this since before I got there, right? We have a really core set of values, and it's important to us that every single hire that we bring in exhibits those values. Everyone's going to be a little bit on a spectrum, right? Some are going to be stronger than others, but what we have found is that you can't just assess for functional fit. You have to assess for whether or not this person is going to be a good values fit. And if you can keep a really strong values fit across the organization, it keeps culture really strong. And so again, they kind of like fall into those good owner, good neighbor buckets. But one of our core values is we roll up our sleeves. Now, it's not a unique value. I think a lot of companies have a value like that.
Yeah.
But it's okay. How does that fit into the team that this person is going into? How does that fit into the function? You know, if we're hiring a senior leader? Is it someone who's willing to kind of get in the weeds and like really dig in? And is it someone who sees a problem and wants to go out and solve that problem? Or are they going to deflect, right? And that deflection is not something that's kind of like built into our culture. So that's how we do it here. I think for me, like values have always been really a big part of how I think about work. Obviously, like I was saying, my first job that I went into was in that like nonprofit space. We were working with nonprofits to help them grow their development function. So we would like help them to raise money and then also help them to hire development leaders. So there was like an executive search element to the role, and when I was there, it was really interesting. Like I was doing some of that work, but I also was someone who like really wanted to know more about how the business worked. And I really cared about like knowing, again, all of the context around what I was doing. And so that's how kind of I ended up like shifting into HR within that org. But when I left that company, I was there for like 4 or 5 years. When I left that company, I decided I wanted to have even more impact. And so I went over to Northeastern University, which is another, college here in Boston. They have a co-op program, so like 6 month rotational kind of like work programs. And I moved into like a counselor role, working with those students. So I was working specifically with like finance students for the most part, and helping them to find opportunities. And I taught a class like how to get a job, how to keep a job. Essentially, was the
Oh, that's
class that
cool.
I taught. And so it was everything from like resumes to interviews to what to wear to work, and how, just again, how to be successful. Um, and I love it. Like I love thinking about what a good fit is going to be, and like helping someone to figure out what a good fit for them would look like. And really, like, again, it's, I wanted to give back. Like I've always had this drive to do that, and obviously like working in nonprofits and universities, education, like all of that kind of ties together. And so when I was looking for a job, like I ultimately decided I wanted to get back into industry, and I wanted to be I wanted to be a recruiter. Like I wanted to get back into like a faster paced life,
Mhm.
but I didn't want to lose that values element. And that's like something that drew me to this company in particular, was that it was very values based, that like the work that we do is really important. I think a lot of that comes from the top down too, right? Like I think you can't just say, hey, we're hiring on values. Like the company has to reflect those values. It has to make decisions based on those values. It has to be like very holistic. You can't like, everyone, again, lots of companies say that they have values and that they're hiring on certain things, but not every company reflects those in the decisions that they make. And so I think when you're looking at companies and assessing them, like that's such a big part of it, is like, okay, are you walking the walk? So again, that was a very long answer to your question, but
That's great.
that's kind
Yeah.
of how I think about it.
And you also talked to me about adaptability, like basically, as you put it, moving where the industry is moving, or I don't know if I said it exactly as well as you did, but just basically, you did talk about adaptability, and why do you feel like that's so important as a talent acquisition leader?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few different reasons for that. I mean, I think, we talked about like different hiring managers are going to have different, sets of requirements. They're going to work differently. They're going to react differently. They're going to have different experiences with recruiting. Like I've worked with a lot of people who have been burned by recruiters in the past, or who just like haven't felt supported by their talent function in the past. And so a lot of my job is like building that trust and being able to adapt to their style while still kind of holding on to what's really important in our process to be able to get them to a place where they realize that we're partners, right? We are not just here to execute on bringing in talent. We are here to partner with you in that, to help you understand and develop your idea about what you need and want in this role, to calibrate where we need to do that. We're counselors. We're thought partners. We're not just here to do the work. And so really thinking about the role that way, I think it's important to be adaptable. You can't build trust if you're coming into every single conversation with the exact same approach and mindset. It just isn't going to work for everyone. And so that's really important to us. Um, I also think, like, again, with AI, with new tools, what like this is an industry that is changing. I think every industry is changing. My husband's in marketing, like he's going kind of through the same
Yeah,
same evolution as we are,
so much going
in
on.
terms of yeah. And so I have always really felt it's important for me to be a first, no, maybe not a first adopter, maybe a second adopter of new technology. When we had Claude rolled out at our company, I was like, okay, I am going to go in there and I'm going to build. I am not an expert. I've never built anything, but I am going to see what I can do and make. And so I think that mindset is really important because like you're not going to grow if you're not adapting, and you're not going to be able to have a like thriving career, I think, in recruiting probably if you're not willing to adapt to what's changing. And I think like, yes, I want to adopt new tools. I want to leverage where we can. I want to level us up in every way that we can. But it all comes back to how do we keep things human? How do we keep those values while still like embracing what is changing and adapting here? So and then also like working in startups, like you have to, like the business is constantly changing, right? Like the priorities shift. And if you can't keep up with the priority shifts, then you're not going to be able to do your job effectively. So that's also super important.
Yeah, it's like you have the fundamental values, right? There's also fundamental best practices and things that we
Yeah.
remain the same, but then there's the adaptabilities like on top of that, like there's different ways we're looking for more productive or efficient ways to execute, right? But the foundation is the same almost,
It
right?
has to stay. Yeah, you
Right.
have to know what really matters to you, and what you're not willing to budge on so that you can explore and test and do those things on top of it. But if you lose sight of like the core of your role and the core of what makes you good at your job, that's where things get a little bit tricky.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well said. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like the future, right? And
Yeah,
you've already touched on too, I think, like we've discussed your obsession for the year, how you're thinking about developing professionally. I did
yeah,
want to just zoom out a little bit and talk about just holistically, right? Just where you are in your career at this point, right? Like head of TA, um, you know, you're at a place now where like things are moving quickly, right? Like you have kids, you're in a leadership role
yeah,
at a startup, so it's there's a lot of things happening, right? And yeah, I'm curious just to get your perspective, and I know folks who are in similar roles to you tuning in similar places of life. It's like we're all thinking about how are we trying to be the best version of ourselves, and like how do we think about our own development and growth? And I was just curious if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit about how you think about your development at this point in your life, like more
yeah,
holistically, right? Like over the next few
yeah, for
years.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I think to take a step back, like I have never had clear, like I've never been one of those people who's like, I am going to achieve X or this is my 10-year plan. Like I've never had a plan. And I think in some ways that's a challenge, but I think in other ways it's allowed me to stay really, really open. Like my approach to my career and kind of what I counsel people to do as well, in the right circumstances is like just be really open, like say yes to opportunities, be willing to go outside of your job description a little bit, because every time I've gone outside of my job description in a way that like adds value, I have been able to level up my career and take on those responsibilities and grow my career. And so it's really always been about like find the problems that are interesting to you. Like I have this awful quality where I cannot keep my nose out of a problem if I think it's a problem and no one's solving it, right? Like I will just go and do
You
it.
said it no, so during the prep call. You said it the best way. It's like one of the cool, like best things I've ever heard. Like I would anyone I know, I'm gonna be like, say this on an interview. You just said I have an inability to see a problem and not to solve it.
I mean, it like
I
drives me
love that so
absolutely
much. I
bonkers.
have an
Um,
inability to see a problem and not solve it.
yeah, and
That's
so
fantastic.
I mean, I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I would
And
know. I would
some
hire you on the spot if you were interviewing for one of my companies. I'd be like, yes, immediately. Start.
that's it.
Yeah.
Um, no, but I think that like quality is what has allowed me to like grow and develop. And so when I think about what's next for me, I don't think about like, okay, I want to be a chief people officer in 5 years. Like, I don't know. Do I? I don't know. It probably depends on the environment. It probably depends on the company. It probably depends on what's happening in my personal life. It probably depends on a lot of different things. Um, for me, I'm really focused on like how do I keep growing and learning and how do I keep solving new and interesting problems and being in an environment that allows me to do those things. And so if it's kind of like the values-based stuff, right? Like if you can keep really focused on the things that matter to you and that allow you to be successful, you can change a lot of the stuff that's around it. You can iterate, you can try a new industry. You can do all these different things if you're able to stay really true to the core of who you are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's really impressive what you've built and what you've been doing over the past several years. And it's really cool to see you continue to progress at Hometap. And I'm really excited for you, like looking into the scope of your new role and the things that you're going to be doing. And it's been great having you on the show. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing a little bit about yourself and experiences growing up. It's like fascinating. I loved learning about
Yeah.
growing up with your mom. She sounds like a really cool person. I think she should be our next
Yeah.
guest on the show. But
Much more interesting than I ever will
we'll
be,
bring out you
truly.
both. You guys come back on. Yeah, let's just do a. But anyways, yeah, thank you so much for contributing and coming on today. I really do appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's been a good time.
Yeah.